For me, it starts with the title. The Godfather, switch a couple of syllables around, we get God the Father.
Welcome to another episode of the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. I'm Chris Bush.
And I am Dean Sluyter.
On this, another special episode, Cinema Nirvana edition. Dean is going to share with us his philosophical and cinema Nirvana insights on the classic American film, Francis Coppola's 1972, The Godfather, which, in my opinion, is the best movie of all time, the greatest movie of all time, a perfect movie.
Yeah.
Just my opinion, humble opinion.
Yeah. You're not the only one, Chris. Really, that's on everyone's list of the greatest films ever. And I have a very short list of, as you say, perfect films that just beat for beat are just right on it. There's not a line of dialogue you could change, not a character that you could, not an actor that you could conceive of swapping out with someone else. It's just, and the magic of how that happened, because, Coppola had to struggle for his casting choices. It's just a miracle that we have this thing.
Yeah. Well, for the uninitiated, share quickly with us, Dean, what is the cinema Nirvana approach to movie movie appreciation?
The approach is that enlightenment, which is the awakening to the presence of the infinite everywhere in the finite, that's what we call Dharma, or what we call Veda, what we call enlightenment. And if it's the infinite, it's got to be everywhere. And that means it's got to be in every rock and in every couch, and also in every movie, and not just so-called spiritual movies, which is too easy to find it there. So what I like to do, and in my book, Cinema Nirvana, what I do is I take deliberately chosen films that you would never think of as spiritual, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Godfather, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and look at them through the Dharma eye, through the Enlightenment eye, and find how enlightenment just shines through because it can't help it, and completely by accident, with zero intention from the filmmakers.
Or so we think.
So that's
as far as we know.
That's my. It works for me.
Yeah, as far as we know.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in.
Right.
What are the Enlightenment teachings of The Godfather? What have you perceived there?
Well, for me, it starts with the title. The Godfather, switch a couple of syllables around, we get God the Father. Okay? To me, this whole film is a meditation on the traditional concept in Western religion, and particularly in the church that Coppola grew up in the Catholic Church, the idea of the patriarchal God as a big father in the sky who takes care of you if you make the pact with him, if you accept him, like the Bonacera, the Undertaker in the first scene. You bow your head in supplication and you say, "Be my friend, Godfather." Then he will be on your side. And as Don Corleone tells Bonacera, an honest man like you makes enemies. Now they become my enemies. Right? That's the traditional approach to the patriarchal. That is the God of the Old Testament, and to a certain degree of the New Testament. The Hebrew people signed up with him, and he made sure to smite all their enemies. Now, the problem is, and this problem became particularly embarrassingly obvious in the 70s when the film was made, was that in a lot of ways that model for the divinity was not working for our society anymore. We were becoming a more liberal society. We were becoming more, the hippie movement, the whole countercultural thing had happened a few years before in the 60s. And so the question that the film kind of contemplates is, can that patriarchal God be salvaged? Can it continue to work for us? And the film, in a way, is kind of Coppola's last-ditch attempt to save that father God. The idea at that time of presenting a mafia boss as in many ways, a noble, sympathetic character that had not been done before. You look at the old Scarface films and so forth of the 30s and the 40s, that had not been done before. When Bonacera in the first scene asks Don Corleone to have the two boys who raped and disfigured his daughter, to have them killed, Don Corleone's response is, "We're not murderers. You ask for justice. That's not justice. Your daughter is still alive." So that's the Old Testament idea of eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth is often misinterpreted. It doesn't mean, indiscriminate violence. It means discriminate. It means measured justice, but it's old-fashioned justice. So can that God, and by the way, look at his name, Vito, life, right? He's the principle of vitality. He is the life of all things. And Corleone means lion heart of the lion, right? The lion is the king of beasts, just as this God is the king of the universe. So can that model continue to work? Now, kind of the key character, and you could say the character whose importance in this film is often overlooked, is the Diane Keaton character, Kay Adams, Michael's girlfriend, then fiance, then wife. She's the only major character who's not Italian, who's not in the family. And in that way, she is kind of our representative in the film, right? She is, emotionally, she's our way into the film. And in the opening scene, in the wedding scene, as Michael is so gently explaining to her what his family is, and tells the story of, what's an offer that you can't refuse? And he says, "That's my family, Kay. That's not me." Right? And so his honesty with her is the bond that makes it possible for her to enter into that. And that makes it possible for us to enter into the experience of the film. We have to love Michael as she has to love Michael for her marriage to work, for the film to work for us. And by the way, she appears to be powdered. Diane Keaton appears to have been powdered to make her complexion lighter in contrast with the olive-skinned Italians. Mm. Okay? Now, so Michael really there represents, he's the hope of a new generation for God the Father. He is, that name Michael, Mikael in Hebrew, means who is like God. And that's the kind of the pivotal question of the film. Who is like God? Is Michael like his father? And he starts by saying no. Well, stay tuned on that. Because first we have the first son, Sonny. He's Sonny, he's the son of God, right? He's Jesus. He's the only character of all those Catholic Italians in the film who conspicuously wears a big crucifix on his chest. And it's interesting, James, how do you say it? Cain or Caan?
Caan, James Caan.
So James Caan with those big square shoulders. And I mean, he looks like he's already hanging on a cross almost, just the way he's built. And just some cosmic coincidence, his initials happen to be JC. Um, so he's Jesus in a very old school traditional sense. The vengeful. He's his father's son. He's the vengeful side. When he dies at the toll booth, you know, it's a visual pun. Here's Jesus paying the toll, paying for our sins, and his when he's riddled with all those machine gun bullets. That is right out of the Renaissance paintings of the crucifixion that just kind of revel in the gory display of his sacrifice. Right now, when Sonny dies, the logical next successor would be the second son, Fredo. But Fredo, well, right, he's Fredo. He's a fraidy cat. He represents the Jews, right? He's this kind of the stereotype of the Nebuchadnezzar. He's the Woody Allen character who, and take the money and run. You just put a gun in his hand, it's already funny. When his father, when the hit is done on Vito, Fredo fumbles the gun, he cries. Interesting that when he starts becoming the betrayer of the family, it's when he goes out to Las Vegas and starts hanging out with the Jews, hanging out with Mo Green, right? Who even his name is this terrible pun for the stereotype of the greedy Jew. I want Mo Green, right? Unintentional. Let's remind people, I don't think Mario Puzo, the co-writer, or Coppola had any of this in mind, but it doesn't mean it's not there. The chicken is not the ultimate authority on the mineral content of the egg that it lays. The stuff just comes through you. So forget about Fredo. So now it falls on Michael, right? Will Michael be will he be the new redemptive generation? It looked in around that time in the Catholic Church. We had the wonderful Pope John the 23rd, who said things like, God is Father. More than that, God is Mother, who does not wish us harm. This incorporation of the female, of the compassionate, soft side into life, what Jung calls the anima, which Kay kind of represents that as well. Can she be incorporated into the family? But now Michael's name also, Saint Michael the Archangel, is he's kind of a figure of prophecy in the Bible. He's and there's all this stuff about how in the final apocalyptic battle, he's going to stand up against the dragon and all of the dragon's allies, and that's really what happens at the end of the film. When Michael, as he's participating in the baptism of his nephew, also named Michael, showing now the perpetuation of all of this drama into yet the next generation. And it's the first time in the film that it's the first time we're actually in a church, that all the church connotations move from the background into the foreground. And as he is saying, yes, I renounce the works of the devil, and he's doing all those works. He's become godlike. His invisible hand he doesn't have to be present to make things happen. He's like the invisible hand of the godlike character.
He's not pulling the trigger, but and I'm reminded of the original cover, the book art, because I remember reading Puzo's novel, and it's a picture of a marionette, on the puppet strings.
Yes.
And a hand.
Yeah.
A hand holding the
Yeah, and yeah,
tapestries.
that was used in a lot of versions of the posters for the film. Yeah, that absolutely. Um, what was it Maharishi used to say, that the enlightened person is like that wealthy businessman who does not have to be seen. He doesn't have to show his face in the marketplace for his influence to be felt. Something like
Well,
that.
that's certainly Michael in the church scene. He's
That yeah,
It's all been orchestrated, and
right.
he has assumed the mantle.
Yeah, yeah. By the way, speaking of the novel, um, this film is one of my favorite examples of the fact that often it's very difficult to make a good film out of it's difficult to make a great film out of a great book, but sometimes you can make a great film out of a just kind of out of a pulp book, because great writing, that which makes the writing great is that which cannot be translated into another medium. It's like the old saying, poetry is that which gets lost in translation. So there have been, I believe, 3 attempts to film The Great Gatsby. They all suck. On the other hand, The Godfather is not great literature. Jaws is not great literature. They're at best, pulpy, what do they call them? Summer reads, beach reads. I never understood that. I could never read that personally, could read that stuff in summer or any other season. But that's me. But because you don't have to deal with the greatness being in the language on the page, it gives a freer hand to the filmmakers. And
Mm,
and so this to me is a shining example of that.
mm. You mentioned in your book the transformation that Vito undergoes toward the end of his life,
Yeah.
and particularly is portrayed in the tomato garden scene at the very end. Talk about that for just a moment.
Yeah, that beautiful scene. Um, yeah, he's become. If you've ever Lyndon Johnson, after he was out of the presidency, and he had a bad heart, and he was really dying at the time, and there's a few photographs, and I believe a TV interview that was done with him shortly before he died. And it's very interesting because his hair is grown out. His hair is looking a little more hippie-ish. He's looking a little more like those anti-Vietnam War protesters that had been his nemesis. And that kind of went with his more uh, gentle, broader demeanor at the end. So Vito, in a similar way, he's not wearing a suit and tie as usual. He's now wearing kind of a rough fabric peasant shirt. His hair is more is lost its slick back look. At the same time, now Michael, who, by the way, Michael, the hair is so interesting. When in the when Michael has to go after he gets involved in the family business, when he assassinates Klusky and Sollozzo in the restaurant. And by the way, when you watch that scene, it has weird, eerie echoes of the Zapruder film.
Mm,
America's other home movie.
mm.
When McCluskey clutches his throat, that's exactly what JFK did. And then when Sollozzo's brains are blown out in this cloud, this pink cloud, that's all in the Zapruder film. It's just so strange. So then when Michael has to go hang out in Sicily for a while till it's safe for him to come back, and he marries the beautiful Apollonia. And in that wedding scene, his hair is different from the rest of the film. It's now become longer and more of the dry look, and he's dancing with Apollonia. And in that scene, he looks just like Bobby Kennedy at that time. They're becoming the liberals. They're becoming the anti-war. They're becoming going for the peaceful side. There's no time to talk about it, but in my book, I took the whole symbolism of the name of Apollonia and the connections to the old pagan world. And I mean, the thing is so rich.
And by the way, read the book, because as Dean was saying, how it's challenging to translate good writing to the big screen. It is challenging to translate Dean's brilliant dissection of this film in the light of Dharma teachings that requires a reading. And you're doing a great job here on the video, but let this be an opportunity for people to get the book and read the book. And this chapter is just fantastic. So anyway, moving on from and talking about Michael's hair.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah. So in the tomato garden scene, as Vito is sliding more in the counterculture, hippie-ish, mellow direction. He talks about how he likes to drink more wine now. He's becoming looser. And Michael is becoming tighter. Michael's hair is now becoming slicked back. You know, he's now morphing into what his father was, as his father on the way out morphs into what Michael was aspiring to be. And it's a beautiful scene. And then Don Vito's death. You know, everyone, all his enemies have been trying for years to assassinate him. He finally dies. How? Who actually mows him down? A little child, his grandchild, armed with a little thing of a little pump bottle of bug spray or fertilizer or something, playing a game. And this is where the film really becomes transcendent. This is where it just goes, you know, we're in this kind of Garden of Eden of the tomato garden. And there's this wonderful thing that Brando did, because at first they couldn't get the kid to cooperate and they were losing the light. They only had time for one more take. And Brando, who's a brilliant improviser, did the thing where he took the piece of orange peel and put it in, which was not in the script. And that got the kid into the scene. And it creates this question, has this fearsome God all along, has this all been a game? Has this all been a cosmic game? Has this all been something we've been playing at? And now here it lies at our feet.
Fantastic. That was fantastic, Dean.
Thanks, Chris.
No, they're so great, so interesting and insightful and delightful and
fun.
True. You know?
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll end with leave the gun, take the cannoli.
Yeah, right.
All right. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Filmosophers Cinema Nirvana edition. And we look forward to more of these with author and co-host Dean Sluyter. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Dean.